All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School, and today we're going back to the well. Our first guest, our 50th guest, and our roughly 100. It's going to be plus or minus a few. Bob Rikeman, owner of the Scorpions, formerly known as the Orlando Scorpions, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Bob, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing pretty good. Before we get too far, I always forget to point people in the direction of where they can catch up with you over on Twitter. It's at Coach Reich27, at Coach Reich27, and obviously they can go to the website, which is scorpnation.com. So for those of you who maybe this is your first time listening to this podcast, which is, by the way, the number one podcast in the world that features owners, founders, GMs of travel ball organizations. Did you know that, Bob? This is the number one it might be the only podcast that features guys like you, but it still makes it number one. So Bob was literally our first guest ever. And then on episode 50, we brought in Bob and his former partner, Matt Gerber. And so here we go, going back to the well. So looking forward to catching up with you, Bob. When we last spoke, when we first spoke, we sort of made a big announcement about how you guys were going to commit to development. You were really putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. You did a big summer of that, and I'll let you sort of give the brief review of what that meant. And then we had that COVID summer, which meant some adjustment. And now here we are at the end of 2021, heading into 2022. So will you go backwards, review for us what that meant where you were committing to development, tell us what last summer looked like, and tell us what you anticipate next summer looking like for the Scorpions.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, we, just as a baseball guy, I felt like travel baseball was, way too many games, and we didn't have enough time with the kids to where we were actually helping the kids get better. And I always felt like travel ball was geared towards the superstar that could show up at a tournament and hit a couple home runs or throw 98 and, but you'd watch kids play, and the kid that's throwing 98's throwing balls off the backstop, and the kid that's supposed to hit home runs is striking out all the time. And I just felt like, there's no education going on here. There's no baseball education going on. It's just play, and, and put the lineup out there. And I was just disappointed with it, to be honest with you. I was disappointed with it as a parent before I got involved in it. And we came from an organization, which I've mentioned to you before, out of Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Diamond Dogs, where it was training all the time. I mean, they do strength training. Now, granted, they have a very centralized organization. So, if you're in Pittsburgh, you play for the Diamond Dogs. It's very centralized. You go to practice every week. You train every week. They go on the field. But Frank and Flanny and those guys up there, Frank is a former White Sox professional guy, and Flanny, I believe, played for Cleveland or Los Angeles. And both of those guys were just really good friends. Even when I was recruiting at Rollins, Frank was a big help of getting kids down out of Butler, Pennsylvania for me. And Frank and I just stayed close. And then when I moved to Pittsburgh, we got involved with that organization, and it was really well run as far as training. So I came from that to go into all these big stuff when we got involved with the Scorpions, and I was very impressed with the Scorpions. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the tradition, we had a lot of success in tournaments, but I just felt for the average kid, if they weren't playing well, they didn't play much, and no one was getting them better. So, we stepped off the ledge, obviously, and said, what, we're gonna train 2 or 3 weeks or whatever in the beginning of the season, and then we're gonna go to the 3 or 4 biggest tournaments we can put these kids in to get them as much exposure as possible, which are the tournaments that most of the scouts go to anyway. So I just looked at that part of it, and so far I think it's been outstanding. I think that we have got a lot better product on the field. It doesn't mean we're going to win more championships or win more games, but when you watch us play now, we're a lot more fundamental. We especially, I noticed in the base running and the defense part of it, We steal a lot more bases. We create a lot more havoc in the games now with Johnny running things and Johnny's base running, and just comes from we just have a more fundamental program now than I think we've ever had. Now, does that mean we're going to win more championships or and things like that? I don't know. I think in the long run it will help us in the bigger games and the bigger events. But I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I'm not in this to win the championship. Like, it's like we talked about just the other day. I've had a lot of success in college. I've been to the College World Series as a coach. I've been to 3 regionals as a player in college. I'm not saying I don't want to win. I mean, I think I've proven in my career that winning has been a pretty good part of my life. But, I think in this case, I'm getting more reward to see more kids become better baseball players, which should translate into more success on the field, and eventually it will. We're only one or 2 years into this. The first year was really good. Then we had COVID hit, and we weren't able to go and train overnight like we wanted to. And this past summer, Johnny said that, even our top team was so much better by the end of the summer than it was in the beginning, and played much better at the end of the summer. We're running into some other issues, and not to get long-winded here, but with this response, but we are running into some issues. We have got to get more homegrown with our team, our top team, so Johnny can continue to spend time with these guys. We are seeing a huge trend with kids not playing in the fall. It was a big trend in the past couple of years. We've seen like agents telling kids not to play, and certain people just saying, I want to train, I don't want to play. They're getting advice to just go out and do stuff and not compete. But the problem is they all want to compete in Jupiter, and we're going to draw the line. And if you don't play with us in the summer and the fall, you're not going to Jupiter with us. You can go with somebody else, and that's fine. If somebody wants to take you and have a transient roster, we're good with it. But, the way Johnny runs things, Johnny needs to be around those kids as often as possible, and it's got to stay within our motto of training. If you're not going to train with us in the summer and the fall, then you're not going to go to the biggest event in travel baseball, which is Perfect Game Jupiter with us. It's just not going to be with the Scorpions, and I've made that clear to Johnny. Johnny and I have had tremendous discussions about it, and you're going to have outliers. You're going to have a Jackson Holiday from Oklahoma that plays for our top team, and he came to everything from Oklahoma. The only time he wasn't there is when he was with Team USA. So, you're going to have outliers, and you're going to have things like that. But our core team is a lot more localized in people that want to commit to us for an entire year, or they're not going to get the prize in the end at Jupiter. At least not with the Scorpions. I'm sure if they're good enough, they'll go with somebody.
Real quick, that's Johnny Goodrich. He's that Reich is referring to. Johnny is the GM and sort of the running the day-to-day on field with their top team, correct?
That's correct. And ironically, I coached against Johnny, so it's funny. Johnny's a little bit younger than me, but Johnny is a military guy. Left high school, went into the Army, served overseas during the war, and he came back to Embry-Riddle. And my first couple of years at Rollins, he was actually a center fielder at Embry-Riddle. We played against them, and he was a little rugrat. And he was very athletic, really fast center fielder, but he was an overachiever. And that is something I really value with him running our high school program, is that he gets so much out of our kids, and they love him. He's a straight shooter, almost to the point where he's brutal at times, but you're always going to get the truth from Johnny, and you may like it, you may not like it. And that's the thing about him that I like the most, is I never have to worry about the high school. I never have to worry about a parent calling me up saying they feel like they were treated unfairly or this and that. Johnny deals with things head on, direct, and he's direct with the kids. And like, I was at the facility yesterday, and he had kids working with him at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, he's always available for kids, and it's just, it's just awesome. Plus, the other good thing with Johnny is, he's a legendary high school coach here. So he has good relationships with the high school coaches, and the high school coaches are very willing to give us their players because of Johnny. And he's attracted more high school coaches to our staff, which has also given us more legitimacy. And I look at we have 2 Hall of Famers on our coaching staff now from the state of Florida. He's brought in a lot of the guys that are just more like us, and getting kids tougher, getting kids better on the field, and putting out a better product. And again, is that going to translate into quote unquote travel ball championships, I really don't know. And honestly, I don't spend much time worrying about it. I know everybody else does, but I don't care. What I care about is that we're helping these kids get better, and we help more kids get a chance to play baseball in college. And that to me is the true sign of success of what I think the Scorpions should be. I mean, it's great to hoist a trophy in the air, and I want these kids to have a good environment and a successful environment, but I don't want to base our success on how many championships we win, because that mentality, in my opinion, leaves a huge percentage of kids behind. And you can't just focus on your best team or your best kids. You have to focus on everybody. And I think that's one thing our training has done, is it's allowed us to focus on all the kids that are Scorpions and not just our top kids.
You're preaching to the choir, because I always get a kick out of those coaches who pound their chest when the kid from their organization that's like 6'4", left-handed, and throws 96 signs somewhere. You're like, wait. You didn't do anything. That was easy. Like it's the other kids who are the ones who really take up the most time and require the most effort to place. But listen, I'm just sitting here giggling to myself, because if this is somebody's first time getting to meet Bob Rikeman, they are getting the full force of energy from in their ears right now, in their earbuds. But I want to be specific and remind, for those folks who don't know, I'll give the short version. 2 years ago, the Scorpions, they jumped out of the traditional summer tournament schedule, like he said, and just did the big ones, and spent 4 weeks in dormitories, living together on a weekly basis, doing what would resemble, to anybody who was peeking in, a major league spring training. And that's I just wanted to really hammer that point home. You said it, but you said it in such a casual way. I just want to hammer that point home. Last year, the COVID summer was a little different. You were telling me off air, or last time we spoke, that you weren't able to live on campus, but you still did. Basically, you commuted in for that daily spring training schedule. And going into next summer, will you be on campus in dormitory setting, or will you do the commuter style?
Yeah, we're right now we're in negotiations to make a certain facility close to us our home. We received the final contract last night, and we're literally about to sign a deal with them, and that will include dorms for our training again. The meal situation right now is either they'll provide meals, or we'll have someone cater it. But we're going to go back to being on site 24 hours a day with
Incredible.
Our kids. And I think that was invaluable. And we had a lot of success the first year, even in tournaments. But when you see Dylan Cruz, in the batting cage till midnight. Yeah. Well, what do you think that the other 150 kids, they all go to the batting cage. And I had coaches explaining to me that their arms are falling off and everything else, but they loved it, and that's the thing, is when you get them away from everything, mom and dad, when you get them away from everything and they get out there, there's not much else you can do. You're not going to play on your phone. There's not enough time. And these kids was toasted. And we had a big meeting afterwards, and Johnny said, we got to tone this down. I think we're getting kids hurt. There's just too much. We got to have more breaks. So we learned on the fly as well, and we did that. We gave more breaks, and we gave kids more time off to just hang out in the air conditioning, and we really improved it as we went along. But we're going to go back to it this year. We've locked it. It looks like we locked it down. I think I can say that we're going to go back to Coco Sports Complex, which is now not called Coco anymore. It's been taken over by another group, a new group. They've been outstanding to work with, and I think we're going to go back there again. It looks like the agreement should be finalized here in the next couple of days. But we're going to do everything there: our tryouts there, our training there. We're going to try and do scrimmages and controlled scrimmages there for the older guys, and eventually, hopefully, we can run some tournaments out of there if they keep upgrading the facility. So, it's having a home is important to us, because when we have a kid from Miami or we have a kid from Georgia that makes our top team, their parents can bring them in and drop them off and come back 3 weeks later. And that right there is a huge cost savings to a family. And And it also is a big issue for Johnny now with these out-of-state guys that want to be part of our program, that they can now be part of the program full time. So that looks really up. It's really really looks good for us. Again, I'll know specifically today or tomorrow. I have the agreement. There's a couple of adjustments I want made to it, but we're ready to sign that. Once we sign that, we're going to finally have a home, and I could not be more excited about it.
One of the things as an not on field, but I'm observing the player on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, is there appears to be a higher level of skill set on the mechanics. I see little kids with beautiful mechanics fielding a ground ball, for example, or just a picture perfect swing from a kid who's really young. They have that advanced training from their individual coach. But then what you see is they lack some of the baseball savvy, right? Because in the traditional sort of travel ball arena, it's you show up on Friday, you play a couple games on the weekend, and you go home. So where you're saying they're playing too many games, I agree with you, but they're missing that chance to reinforce the baseball savvy, right? When you see that play you haven't seen in 3 years, are you ready for it because you have the experience in the back of your head? And so when you're putting the kids on these fields and you're doing these instructional games, the coach pitch games, the simulated games, that's a way to create this baseball savvy almost overnight. In 3 weeks' time, there's just so many opportunities for learning.
There's so much truth to that, and just because I say we're going to train more and play less, that doesn't mean we're not going to compete. Like there's a huge disconnect in sports nowadays, in all sports, where everybody's got a private coach now. But it's great that you got a private coach. It's great that you can throw a bullpen with nobody around. It's great that you can throw a nasty curveball with nobody around. It's great that you can hit bombs and BP. But a lot of these kids that are robots, they can't compete. Yeah. And they don't know how to translate their quote-unquote perfect mechanics into an actual performance. And that's one thing that Johnny and I also agree on. Everything we do in training is competitive. And I did that as a college coach. We didn't just take BP. We had situational BP. We had competition BP. And we had a drill we did called get them on, get them over, get them in. And we used the little Easton Thunder stick. And we used a mini baseball, the Decker baseball. It was a 5-inch baseball or something like that. And I pitched behind the L screen, and these guys would have to bunt them on, get them over, get them in, move them over, infield in, infield back. And you played one inning at a time. You either scored or you got 3 outs, and the next inning went on. And we used to do all kinds of things like that. Well, now we're doing that with the Scorpions. So you can't just teach kids how to play the game. You have to have them in competitive environments because, and that's one thing we've also done. We've had controlled scrimmage weekends with the Florida Burn. And Guthrie and his team is phenomenal. And I love those guys. And they're just like us. But Guthrie's won Jupiter 2 out of the last 4 years. And he's done it because he's got all his kids with him all the time. And it's a perfect example. They keep their homegrown kids. They train them. They're together all the time. You look at Ostingers, who won it this year. They have those kids all the time. And a lot of the big-name guys aren't in the championship at Jupiter right now. And it's the homegrown guys that are in the championship at Jupiter. And I think that's one thing that our training it really is aiming for, is to try and get these kids with Johnny and our staff as often as possible. Because I'll tell you this, travel baseball teams take way too much credit, right? They spend all this time with their high school coaches. You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
And these high school coaches have them. They deserve a lot of the credit, if not most of it, because they're with these guys all year round, and the travel ball coaches, it's our job to help these guys, the high school coaches, have their player back as good, if not better, than what they left them as. And that's something that Johnny's really adamant about, and I'm really adamant about. And that's why our relationship with the high school coaches has gotten better. Because when that kid commits to Miami, or he commits to Penn State Junior College, or he commits to anywhere, it's a combined effort. it's not the Scorpions. We put it on social media and we blow the kids up, but we're with the kids for a couple months of the year. That high school coach has a lot to do with it. The guys training these kids year round have a lot to do with it. We're just a piece of it. And, you know, it's even like we talk about with our social media, like everybody in my organization thinks I'm in the Stone Ages and we need to do a better job. And I agree. It's taken me about a month to agree, but I agree. You know, I'm not a big fluff guy. I don't like fluff but, you know, we had two former Scorpions pitch in the ALCS this week. You had Greinke and you had Sale, right? And I've coached against J.D. Martinez when he was at Nova Southeastern, you know, and I've coached against Alex Cora when he was at Miami. And believe it or not, we beat Miami that day, just so you know. And but I mean, is that really my doing? Is that something that I should take credit for? Like, I think we should put it on social media. That's great. But the reality of it is, there's a lot of people that have the ability, plus the kid himself. You know, when Chris Sale went to, you know, Florida Gulf Coast Community College, he was one of the best pitchers in the country because of Chris Sale, not because of the Scorpions.
Yeah.
So great that we note that they played for the Scorpions, but let's be honest here. There's a lot of people involved in these kids' success, including the kid. And I think a lot of times we want to beat our chest and say, we did it, when in reality, the high school coaches are always overlooked. You know, the kid's effort is always overlooked. It's always the organization taking the credit for it. And that's my issue with social media and fluff. I think there needs to be more to it. And I think that, you know, one of the things we have a guy named James Corns right now doing our social media. He's doing a tremendous job of putting the high school in with all the notifications. So we're giving credit to the high school coach now. We're giving credit to the kid now. And I think that's so important because, you know, we're a platform. And we're a platform that can only be a platform with help. You're only going to be good if you have the high school coaches supporting you, and you're only going to be good if the colleges come to your events, and you're only going to be good if you have good players. So, you know, we really need to look at the whole credit thing and pass the credit around when these kids have success.
For sure. Now, the Scorps have been sort of, you know, one of the top dogs in the country for a long time, and mostly homegrown Central Florida kids. But obviously, when you play at that high level, you guys are going to get inquiries, and you've already mentioned it. You had a kid from Oklahoma. You're going to get inquiries from top talent, and maybe some kids who aren't top talent from outside of Central Florida. And I'm assuming you take each one case by case, but I'm assuming, I don't know for a fact, but your rosters are mostly still Central Florida guys, right? Your guys down there.
It has been. I mean, this year our top team had a lot of our Georgia affiliate guys. I mean, Johnny's really good about making sure the best players are on. Like, you know, we have affiliates now, and
which was perfect transition. That was going to be my next question, and I want to just kind of wind you up and let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So Georgia's Mid-South. We call it Mid-South now because they do have a little bit. They're branching a little bit into Nashville area. Heath Phillips owns Georgia, and he pitched in the big leagues with the White Sox. He's one of the most beloved coaches in Scorpions history. Even when my son played, I mean, Heath was a favorite of all the players. He's always been a favorite, and he wanted to branch out and start his own thing when he moved to Georgia. They let him, and he's done a tremendous job. And now we've got a couple of youth teams now in Nashville. We've got Cody Ortega, who runs New England, and they're based out of Rhode Island. They used to be Rhode Island Prospects. Cody also has local ties, Kissimmee, and we have that group there. One of my former college players who was on the team that beat Alex Cora at Miami, George Perez, who's the head coach at St. Thomas University and also assistant athletic director. He owns Scorpions Miami. One of the hardest working kids to ever play for me, transitioned from a middle infielder to a catcher in his senior year and ended up getting drafted and playing pro baseball. So George is just, he comes from blood. He's one of my former guys. You know, we got Casey Bice in Missouri. We call it Scorpions Midwest. Predominantly younger group, but he's starting to grow even more. He's been with us for a couple of years. He was a connection with Sal Lombardo. They're both part of that pitching program from Tom House. Right. And Casey came and watched us during training 2 years ago, and he says, I have to be involved in this. This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. But we have groups flying from Seattle to watch us train. I mean, it's been really an awesome thing. And my biggest thing with Scorpions growth is I'm not going to grow with just adding teams. I want to grow with people I know. I know all these guys. I feel comfortable with them with the Scorpions name. And they have the ability now to send their best players down to tryouts and try to make our top team. And last year, a few of Heath's guys were on that team. There was a lot of Georgia guys on our top team last year. So we definitely want to stay in our organization. But, Jackson Holiday is a perfect example. Jackson's dad loves Johnny, and he wanted him to be with Johnny, and there's a connection there. And he committed to everything. Like I said, the only time he missed is when he went to Team USA, and you can't buck a kid for making Team USA. So
no,
and he came to everything, and he was a great example of the exception. And we're going to have exceptions. We're going to have kids that play with us all the time, and that are not from Florida. It's just the way it is. And if they're willing to commit to us, and Johnny feels they're a good enough player, then we're going to put them on that team. And but I do think that this training is going to allow a lot of our younger teams now that have been going through it for a couple of years to produce top team talent. And once that happens, we'll have a really good feeder system. And we're still in the process of it. Are we there yet? No, we're not. I mean, I made a huge change 2 years ago that I was pretty much laughed out of the building and mocked every day on social media. And I've heard people tell me, pay more and play less and all this crap, and that's fine. But you know what? I've never lived my life following other people. I've never lived my life pleasing other people. I care about the people that wear purple, and I wanted to make a decision that was a baseball decision. We needed to help kids become better baseball players, not just showcase bandits, because showcase bandits suck when they go on to college. They don't do well. They don't do well in their high schools because it's not true competition. I mean, I'm 55 years old, and I can take BP right now and probably hit 5 out of 20 balls out of the park too. So what does that make? It makes me a
good showcase player.
I mean, so it's just that's not going to make you a better baseball player. That says you have ability, and that definitely says that you have the ability to do something. But it's the training of how to be a better baseball player, about how to hit a cutoff man, how to steal a base, how to stop somebody from doing something on you. And you listen to a lot of the old school guys announcing these games on Major League Baseball. And the other night, one of them said something that Davey Johnson told me as a college coach: first and third push bunt, it's undefensible. Well, I'm watching a Major League game and they're talking about somebody doing it. Like, those are things that the way old school baseball guys were raised. They were raised learning how to play the game. Everybody hates Laz Diaz that's a Red Sox fan and the Astros fan because of the job he did the other night. But Laz Diaz used to help run an umpire school at Rollins when I was coaching at Rollins. Laz taught me 10 different ways to pick people off that were legal, that no one knew were legal. And we used to pick guys off at second base all the time because of a way to step off the rubber and throw to second base that everybody thought was illegal, but Laz literally taught us how to do it. And that's the part of it that I can't express enough. These ifs now give us a much bigger pool of people to choose from this team from in-house. They're all Scorpions now, and it makes things a little bit better. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the Affiliates and the direction it goes.
Well, I wanted to.
I'm excited.
It's apparent you could spin up an affiliate in all 50 states overnight if you wanted to. So it's apparent to anybody who's watching that you're being really intentional with your growth. What type of advice would you give an organization, whether they're looking for affiliates in other states or whether they're just looking to add another roster? What do you tell that guy who's at an inflection point with growth?
I think the biggest thing is that when I first took over, I wanted to have Scorpions here, Scorpions here, Scorpions there, and I sat myself down and I just said, look, what are the most important things to you? Well, one is my name, and my name is also the Scorpions name, and I emphasize that with all of our staff all the time. If we're going to add this person, is he a good fit? Is he a good fit for what we're trying to do? And we've had people come to us, and they've gone with other organizations, and they did not come with us. They didn't like what they heard, or we didn't like what we heard. But with the people that, if you're going to grow with people that are like you, because the travel baseball world is a dog-eat-dog world. And there's teams that pop up all over the place. And, we've had incidences where we had a youth program that was inherited when I took over the Scorpions program that had gun raffles and booze raffles, and I had to get rid of them. Like, listen, I'm not anti-gun and I'm not anti-booze, but I'm 100% anti-gun and anti-booze with the Scorpions. Like, I don't want that crap on social media, and they would not listen to me about it. They kept doing it, and they try to hide it on Facebook and all this other crap, and I just got rid of them. Like, it's just, there's a right way and a wrong way, and I feel really good with the people we have. Now, does that mean we won't grow any more than we are now? No, it doesn't. But it's got to be right. It's got to be people I can trust, and I know people. I can't babysit the guys in New England, right? They're in New England. They do every single day. I don't see what they do every single day, but I know Cody does an awesome job. His parents love him. They love everything you look at social media. Their parents are pushing purple everywhere. George does an unbelievable job in Miami. He grew that from nothing in Miami with a lot of competition down there. He's done a tremendous job. I mean, they put pictures on there with their 8U team eating pizza and ice cream in the dugout. That's what I'm talking about. People that care about the kids, they care about the name, and they do a tremendous job. And we talked about Heath Phillips. I mean, this guy pitched in the big leagues, Team USA. He's probably 6'10", 300 pounds.
Oh, man, he's
always
a monster.
With a smile on his face, always fishing. He could not be a better person to be around kids. Like, the guy is just awesome around kids, straight shooter. The kids love him. And that's what we want out of our program. So my advice to anybody else trying to growth is fine. We used to have 4 teams at every age group, and that's great. And you have 500 kids in Orlando. There's not 500 kids in Orlando that need the Scorpions. So we downsized Orlando because it's not right. You're taking money from people that have no chance of playing college baseball. I'm not saying every kid play college baseball that plays for the Scorpions, but the more teams you add, the less the percentages go even further down the road. So, we had some tough decisions this year. I had a really good friend of mine that wanted his son to play for our youth program, and we had to drop the team because we had no catchers try out. Now, I could have finagled it and made somebody a catcher, but it's just not the right thing to do. It's just not. You're gonna make 13 kids suffer because no one can catch a pitcher, and it's just not going to happen. And and our youth guy Mello, he does a tremendous job, and he's like, Mike, I just can't do it. We have nobody that can catch a pitcher that's in that age group, and I'm not going to add another team and make people miserable all summer. So that it's just a mindset, and I think that your mindset has to be your brand first, and everything else second. I mean, you have to make sure when you grow, just like any company, you have to grow the right way with the right people, because the bigger you get, the harder it is to manage. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, bigger is not always better, and it's very tempting. It's very tempting, and it's hard to manage at scale. It's a different ball game trying to manage 500 people than it is trying to manage 50 people. So one of the things we were. Go ahead.
It just depends what your priorities are.
Yeah.
I want every kid in the Scorpions organization prioritized. I don't care about our top team. They didn't win in Jupiter this year. They won in Jupiter last year. It didn't change my birthday. It didn't make me any happier or any sadder. I care about the whole organization. And when I have 3 kids that are upset on one team, it doesn't matter if it's the top team or the last team. I got 3 kids I got to deal with. So I want to prioritize all of our teams, all of our coaches, all of our staff. And you know what? I have faith in Johnny Goodrich that he'll make our teams better over time, and he's doing that. And you're going to have good years and bad years. You're going to have years where, we've had years in Jupiter where our freshman team went to the Final 8, and our top team, which had 5 draft picks on it, didn't make it to the playoffs and lost the consolation game. So you can't use a tournament as the end-all, be-all judge of what's going on. You have to look at the big picture, and I think that's the biggest thing. And I've had people tell me I don't care about winning, and I don't know many travel ball guys. I said this to you before. I don't know many travel ball guys that have been on a team that's gone to the College World Series, but I have taken a team to the College World Series. I think I know what winning's all about. I think if you ask any of my former players, but I've never heard any successful coach talk about winning who's won. You don't hear anybody talk about winning who's successful. You know, you talk about process, program, the name on the back of your jersey, the name on the front of your jersey. Those are the things you talk about. And with the Scorpions, I care about the Scorpions, not about which tournament we won or this tournament we won, because we do win, and we don't need to talk about it. We just need to produce better baseball players on every team so they have another chance of playing baseball, whether it's they play in high school and they, you know, we have one kid, a local kid here, who made his second JV team last year, who now is probably going to be on varsity this year after training for a year with Johnny. And like the mom, you see the look on the mom's face, but more importantly, you see the look on the kid's face. That's just one story of a kid that couldn't walk and chew gum a year ago. Now he may play for his high school team as a sophomore, and that is the most incredible thing in the world. And that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to be more proud of, instead of hoisting a trophy that everybody forgets about 2 days after it's over.
Yeah, for sure. So to circle back to sort of the beginning of the conversation, and we talked about how you had adjusted the summer schedules. You do your spring training, and then you go and play in some of the big events. What are those big events that you've chosen to send your guys to?
Well, I think the biggest thing we try to do is we obviously try to go to, you know, most of the perfect game big ones, like the World Series, the WWBA, and now with the UBC going age groups 14 years to 17U, that's really given our better teams one of the biggest challenges they'll ever face in their amateur baseball career. You're playing against 10 of the top organizations in the country. We just added the Texas 12 out of Texas to play in that, or to fill out the 10 teams. But, you know, you got the Canes and the Dirtbags, and you got East Coast Sox, and you got all these teams in there that are traditional powerhouses. Every game is 90 miles an hour, and guys that can make diving plays, and guys that can run the bases. And it's just from what I'm told from our players and our coaches, it's the best experience they've ever had. And I can tell you from being on the group, the group of leaders for the UBC, it's an awesome group to deal with. You know, you got the Burn in there. You got Richie with the elite squad in there. You've got guys that are just really tremendous guys that really care about, you know, improving the game for these kids. And everybody has a say. Everybody has an opinion. I would definitely say that Petty's more the leader of the group. He does a tremendous job of kicking us in the rear end and making sure we get going on things. But it's just a great group, and the tournament is just phenomenal. I mean, if you ask any of our coaches that have been to it and any of our players that have been to it, they say it's probably the best event all year long. It's the quality of talent. There is no pool play where you're facing a guy throwing 70. I mean, you're every game you're facing somebody's top guy, and it's just it's a big challenge, and it's probably the best thing that ever happened to organizations who have a top team at every age level that needs somewhere to compete on a daily basis. And it's got great pro coverage, it's got great college coverage, and it's a tremendous event for our kids.
That's you know, I don't know how many guests I've had on who've talked about how too many teams are at those big events, and you juxtapose that to a small event where the teams are evenly matched. Now, this particular event is sort of the creme de la creme, but you could replicate that at the next level down. And guess what? The colleges who look for guys at that next level down would all attend that event, right? This is, to me, it's a no-brainer to try and replicate this style of event. No pool play. You get in there, and every pitch matters. That's big time. Well, where do they host that this year?
It's going to be, I think, in West Palm again this year.
Got it. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, big.
And it's going to right now. It's like June 20th to the 23rd, and I believe it's going to be in West Palm again. So it's a great event, and I do agree with you. We've had that discussion. You and I have had this discussion before, and I've had this discussion internally. You know, we are going to look at doing more interstate play in the fall, especially. Maybe our top team plays JUCOs all the time. Maybe our other teams play, you know, maybe we go down to play Richie in Miami with all of our teams. Maybe we go to play the Burn in Sarasota. But we've got to find a way to play meaningful competition more often, especially in the fall where we're seeing a lot of the families are just tired of travel. They're tired of paying money for travel. And honestly, the event doesn't matter anymore. It becomes can I afford this now? And that's something that we're looking at. And I've always wanted to have like a travel baseball league anyways, like a college summer league. I think Florida would be perfect, but we have so many organizations right in Orlando that it could definitely happen on a regular basis where we could do it. The biggest challenges are interfering with high school fields. Field access right now is horrible still in Orlando. But I think something like that is long overdue, and we're actually looking at it right now to try and do something like that in the fall, and especially where we just signed this new facility deal, we may actually have the fields to pull it off. So we're looking at it.
This was something you and I spoke about very recently, and I believe my words were something to the effect of "do it." Right, like I challenge you to go do it, and I've been doing that. I've been using that phrase with guests on the show where, I'll ask them, hey, what do you think you can do to have a positive impact on travel baseball? They give me an answer, and I say, cool, go do it. I challenge you to go do it, and sometimes it's things that are out of reach for one person, and then sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's hey, let's set up a league, and in the first year, it's going to be 4 teams. Cool. The second year, it'll be 6 or 8, and then by the 5th year, it might be 32 teams. With 4 different locations you play. Who knows? But this is something I think is definitely within reach, and will have a big time positive impact. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I've thought for a long time that summer has gotten so efficient from a recruiting standpoint that summer has been a big reason that fall kind of stinks for a lot of organizations. It sort of like doesn't move the needle. Now, for some organizations, they're doing it right and they're doing things in a unique way, and they're getting to the right events. But I would argue if you're scheduling your fall in the same way you schedule your summer, it's probably mostly a waste of time. Now, excluding a couple of the big events, and that's not because the fall's no good. It's because the summer is so great, so efficient.
I think that has become an issue. I think the cost travel is real now. It's a huge issue for families, and I think they're fine with it in the summertime because you see the immediate result of you go to certain places and there's hundreds of scouts there, and then you go to a tournament in the fall, got to stay overnight for 4 days, and you might see 2 or 3 college coaches there. And I think that part of it is, it's difficult for the. I really do. I think again, everything in life you either create value or you don't. And I think to a lot of these families, some of the fall stuff is not creating value. And I think that's something we need to take control of and look at what doesn't. Because you're right, you can't just play to play. Like there's got to be a value there. And I think again, I think a parent would love to go to Sarasota for the weekend. It's local. You're in Florida and play 4 games against the Burn and come home, or even just go to the Burn on Saturday, play 2 games and go home. No stay overnight.
Bingo.
Something like that is doable, and I think that's something we're really going to try to pursue in the summer. And we've been in talks with other organizations about doing stuff like that. I mean, we've even had talks with the East Coast Sox about meeting in Jacksonville or meeting in Tallahassee or meeting somewhere and playing them. So these are things that I agree with you 100%. And I go back to my days in the oil field with, Dan Rice, the dad of the Rice brothers, would sit in my office and say, Reich, we got to have people that create value. If they don't create value, we don't need them. And that's the thing. Like every decision we make with our kids and our teams and our program has to be value orientated, or it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And that may butthurt some companies and tournaments and stuff, but I got to look at it for our customer base is our families. And I can tell you right now, the biggest complaint we have is the fall's too expensive. So it's just the travel's too expensive after a long summer. and everything runs right into each other nowadays. So it's like they don't even get a break.
And the biggest spot, you nailed it, is where if you could get somewhere and get right back and sleep in your own bed, that's the biggest
100%.
That's the biggest cost savings out there. It's travel baseball has this bad reputation of being expensive. Most of the time, it's not the baseball; it's the travel. And so, if you can create good events where you're playing strong competition and where you happen to be located, you can do day trips, easy day trips. Get back to your own bed, eat in your own home. Maybe it requires you pick up lunch on the road. Well, that's a lot less expensive than 2 nights in a hotel and 7 meals on the road. So I think you can do it, man. I think next fall you're going to have a league. That's my prediction.
Well, the other thing too that a lot of people don't think about in this is you're probably going to be able to retain some of the football players too. The football players can't take off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Big
but
point.
A football player could definitely play on Sunday. If he plays football Friday night, he could play Saturday. You're going to get a lot of the football players that really have no choice. Now You're going to give them a choice. If they want to play baseball in the fall, they may be able to play baseball in the fall. So these are all things that I think that we're trying to look at and try to make the fall a lot more productive for the families and the kids. And quite honestly, it's actually been made easy for us by the NCAA because the recruiting period is 4 weeks. So now you have a window to even play with in that 4 weeks, because outside that 4 weeks, you're wasting your time.
Listen, people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear it, but you are. That's just the facts.
100%. Because everybody says, "Oh, well, it's only the Division Ones." Well, the problem is the recruiting budgets for Division Two, Division Three, and NAIA are not the same budget.
Exactly.
And that's what these guys don't understand. That's why everybody goes to the big events, because they can justify it. And in the fall, the one event that everybody goes to is Jupiter. Right or wrong, it's Jupiter. And sometimes they will go to the underclass and things like that, because those are important as well. And the Freshman World Series, that's important as well. But you're not going to get them, these smaller schools with the smaller recruiting budgets at a lot of events. And
that's right.
That's why Division II went to tryouts. Division II went to tryouts on campus, because it's easier to let a kid come on your campus and try out than it is to give somebody a $50,000 recruiting budget.
Correct. My D3 coaching buddies will get mad that we say that when the quiet period comes and the dead period comes, playing tournaments is kind of irrelevant. And the reason is that D3 guy's not going to get on a flight to go down and see kids. It's not happening. They're going to stay within a couple hours of home. And guess what? There's not going to be a tournament with 100 teams there. There's going to be a tournament with 12 teams there. Or 16 teams there, and that's it. So the fall becomes so much less efficient, which hopefully will lead to some positive things next year when you start up your own league down there.
I think it's going to be awesome. I think getting Sunshine State Conference schools, getting the junior colleges, getting the NAIA schools to go to Sarasota for a game it's going to happen. I mean, either that or they don't have interest, but. The fact that you'd be able to drive somewhere now and see a bunch of teams play on a 4-field complex or whatever, and you're going to go see the Scorpions in the Burn or the Scorpions and somebody else, and you're going to get people there, and that's the best part about it. You'll get a lot of the smaller colleges now that are like, hey, I can drive 2 hours and see 10 kids pitch, and I can see 20 kids hit, and it's worth it now.
Yeah,
and that's we've got to make it more accessible for the coaches, and we've got to get our kids that are not. Everybody thinks they're Power 5. Let's be real about this. Power 5 kids could play in a field in the middle of nowhere and be recruited.
Yeah,
and that's another obstacle we have. Everybody thinks because they play for the Scorpions they're Power 5, and that's another discussion on another day. But it's just we got to get our kids in front of the right people, and I think you're right. Some type of fall league or fall plan or fall program that's not tournament based for a lot of our kids is going to be a better situation.
Gosh, it's so good. Listen, you and I think could go for another hour, but I want to start heading towards wrapping up. Before we hang up here, we need to make sure that we give a shout out to Sal. You mentioned Sal Lombardo earlier, the Godfather Make sure you tell him I said hello, and Janet Weber, the glue that keeps it together down there. So make sure.
I got a great team. I mean, Sal is, like I've told you before, it's like having another dad. Both of my parents have passed away, and Sal's not shy about telling you how he feels or what he wants or what he thinks, and he's a great teammate. And then you got Janet, that is the heart and soul of the Scorpions, and she keeps us going in the right direction every day. Another person that's not shy to tell you how she feels. You got Mello, who runs my youth program. Mello is like my third son, and he likes to give me a hard time every single day and every minute of every day. And I've never, you're not going to find anybody. It's very rare. So saying anybody is probably wrong, but very rare to find somebody who loves working with 9 to 12-year-olds. The guy just he lives for it, and then Johnny is probably one of the best additions the Scorpions ever had. I love Johnny. Excuse me. I love Johnny. I love Johnny like a brother. He believes in everything I believe in. He's hard-nosed. He makes our kids tougher, better, and he has expectations every day, and I like that. And I'm very fortunate to have Johnny with us every single day, and I'm very fortunate for the coaches he's brought in. We have great people, and I got my daughter working for us now. Janet hired her a couple months back, and she's trying to learn the she's doing more the baseball side of things, while Janet's doing more the finance side of things. And that's really rewarding. That I have a kid that wanted to do that, and she's a bulldog too. So I hear it all the time. Every time I'm wrong, I know it, because I have a group that's honest with me. And they don't pull any punches, and they tell me how they feel, and they tell me when I'm being old and fuddy-duddy. And I'm telling you, the social media thing took me a month, just so you know. It was a very me, and I don't like fluff, and I don't like all the bull crap, and saying that a kid that's throwing 65 has a wipeout slider and stuff like that. So we've come to agreements on certain but in the long run, I think that they were 100% right, that we needed to, improve our social media for our kids. And I got my way of saying, let's make sure that we make baseball comments that are valid baseball comments when we promote kids. And I think that we're on the right path. But I have a very good team. I couldn't do this without them. I wouldn't do this without them. And I'm very fortunate.
And I've met the whole crew several times, and everything you're saying is right on point about each one of them. Before we hang up, any other topics you felt like you wanted to touch on today?
No, I mean, I think what you're doing for kids and travel ball is great. I think that, I've told you this before. I wish we could go call it amateur baseball instead of travel baseball and form some type of unity of how this thing is done. But I think that's down the road. I think in order for travel baseball to survive, it's going to have to become more training orientated. You talk to all the pro guys, and all of them will say the same thing. We have a bunch of showcase bandits. We don't have a lot of baseball players, and that's got to change. It's got to change. We go to these showcases, and a kid hits a 500-foot ball, and he next thing you know, he's like the most highly sought after kid in the country, and then he can't play, and that happens a lot. And I think that we're going to have to get back to training these kids. When I played youth baseball, even in Little League, my coaches worked with us, and they were truck drivers. And I remember my Little League coach was a truck driver, and he would come to practice with his big 18-wheeler and get out and teach you how to hit. Whether it was right or wrong, somebody was working with you all the time, and they worked with you on catching drills and blocking drills when I was 9 years old.
Yeah,
and now
that's
we
cool.
Just pick a tournament and play.
And you fill out a lineup card. You show up and fill out a lineup card, and that's just not enough.
It's not that's a generalization, and generalizations are typically bad. A lot of organizations do a very, very good job, but I think in our case, it is something that we had to do. We were becoming a showcase bandit nation, and I had to, I did not like it. It was something that really needed to change. And I think there needs to be something like that nationwide, to where we organize, instead of being so competitive with each other and bad-mouthing each other, we have to get more towards teaching kids how to play at the younger levels and making the kids better baseball players, because we have too many showcase players, way too many showcase players. It's great that their pop times are great. It's irrelevant. In a game, these kids cannot do it. And that's a big issue that needs to be discussed. And there's some guys on Twitter that are Major League Baseball players that are very adamant about it, and they hack apart everything. But on a lot of things, they're right. We don't have a lot of baseball players anymore. We have a lot of showcase guys now, and that's an issue. Guys that can't bunt, guys that can't hit and run, guys that can't do the little things that we were all forced to do when we learned how to play baseball. And that's no longer the case. Now it's okay to strike out 12 times a game or walk 15 people because you threw 98 miles an hour. And that to me has got to change. And it's got to change at the ground level, because if it doesn't, fewer kids are going to have an opportunity of a lifetime.
Mm. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming on. Going back to the well for the third time with you here has been fun. Again, I think if this was somebody's first time sort of getting to meet you, hopefully they're feeling the energy that you bring on a daily basis. This is like normal. He's not hyped up just because we hit record. He's always hyped up, and I love it. And that's why we go back to the well. Listen, let's talk again soon, and best of luck with the rest of your fall and heading into the winter here.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for all you do for the kids. Thanks for all you do for amateur baseball. I think it's awesome, and keep it up. You're doing a great job.
All right, man. Talk soon.
All right, brother.